beyond the internet, beyond applications. Like,
See,
come
this
on.
is where, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, no, no. No, go ahead. I was done.
I mean, I keep going back to this, like the personal Rolodex, right? The knowledge graph, the just like the single source of truth, right? And I think that this is where like social CRMs come into play. But look at because the CRM
Oh, I don't know if it's me or you, but you just cut out for me. What do we got? What's the verdict? Oh, it's probably me.
and how do you communicate with people? So I think that sometimes, like what's in a name, right? And that's why I keep talking about CRMs. I'm like, what is it that it like I'm not explaining? And I don't mean that in it. It's like, I feel like I'm not explaining it correctly, but I mean, back when there was just Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. I remember I used to say, and this was when Twitter was like all the like the Real Housewives and stuff, like they were on, and it was like you could actually like communicate with the, like celebrities, right? Quote unquote. But I would describe it because I was in ad sales at the time, and people didn't understand this. It's like Facebook is like, your childhood friends or whatnot. LinkedIn was your, business, your corporate or whatever, professional Rolodex. And then you had Twitter, which was this whatever, right? And so again, it's like it's all our data, and it's how we organize it, and it's the relationships that we have. So that was one thing I wanted to say. But then the other part is, you know, I really was hoping that like to have models be able to be good at what am I trying? So Gemini's not good at like summaries and things, right? But Gemini has access to like all of my Google Docs and stuff like that and Drive. And so this is a bigger problem outside of inboxes is like, which models are doing they're connected to your inbox. Actually, no, I mean, it's a valid thing. And so that's where getting the model that does the right thing with the inboxes, I think is equally, if not more important than, yeah, I think that that's got to be in consideration because otherwise I would be working with, yeah, I would like Gemini and Google, but it doesn't do what it should do. So yeah,
Well,
those are
Mhm.
my
So
thoughts.
that's why I just started using Copilot yesterday, but Copilot involved in like all of my Microsoft um software,
mhm.
and it's extremely good. Like you're able to draft emails, summarize emails. You're able to do a lot with the actual Copilot, not just the little app by itself for communication. If you don't use the full Copilot, you're like kind of missing out on how strong it actually is.
Yeah, there is. I think that's an interesting kind of point. I guess a couple of things there is that personally, I find that Gemini is actually really good at summaries. I don't really use it for anything else because I don't really think it's very good at doing much other than that. But it is really good at,
Wow.
at consuming long form content and then pulling like stuff out of it. And one of the secret tricks that I have found in kind of jury rigging my own Copilot because I don't want to use Microsoft's, but it is cool, and I did use it on my Windows partition for a while. Um, the one of the sort of like one of the hacks that I think I will probably try to, if I were to build a client, try to integrate something like this, is a sneaky little trick is if you go to the Google, I know AI Studio will do it to some degree limited, and then pro tip for anybody who is who wants to venture out a little bit and go to the Google Cloud Console. If you use Vertex AI and you pick an experimental Gemini model, all the inference is free. So you can just dump hours and hours of video in there and get a ton of summaries. And one of the things that you can do is you can record your screen, scroll through your email inbox, and then dump the whole thing into Gemini and be like, hey, like, tell me what these actual email, like, do I care about any of these? And if you have like maybe a baseline prompt of like I work as a a software engineer at blank company. Blank is my boss. Blah blah blah. You give it a little bit of context manually and just store that part, and then just start dumping videos in there. And then you can the advantage to that is you end up building context over time to where you can kind of refine that initial prompt to where you can sort of get Gemini to figure out what actually matters to you. But trying to deliver that to a consumer and make it easy is a whole different ballgame. I know Gemini right now in their chat app, I know I can at my Google Workspace from there, but that doesn't work on my work workspace. It only works on my personal one. So that's the other kind of thing.
Yeah, it's been said that the future is going to be kind of like there's this kind of race to create that one user experience, that one interface that people just hit for everything. Like there's no more context switching, there's no more apps. Like it's a different paradigm. And I think what we currently have is it's great that we have all these networks and social networks and our emails and our drives, but those just act as databases in the future that we pull from, or maybe we just migrate everything into this new paradigm. I think that's probably how it'll be. But there's a bridge that happens over time, right? Like you're bridging into the next.
That's what X is supposed to be, right?
Supposed to, right? Maybe.
Well, I personally I think that's really difficult to do because there's so many platforms unless you're open source. So if you are looking at the screen right now, one of the other applications that I found today is called Franz, which is a free messaging app for WhatsApp, Slack, Messenger, and it's open source. And one of the cool things about Franz that you can do is you can make little things called recipes, which is just like one file. You can probably fumble through it with Claude, and you can make your own little integration. So they have they have a bunch of examples of all of these stuff. So this is just the examples that come packaged. So more than likely, so we have a Discord one, we have Hangouts, we have Mattermost, we have Proton, we have Slack, we have TweetDeck, which I don't think works anymore. But so if I click on one of these, then I have it looks like we have let's see, examples, and then this is going to be just a package.json, index.js, and webview.js is all that I need to do to add my thingy to this thingy. So we have a plugin system, and I think open source really has an edge in terms of plugins, because if I need something, like I have 30 examples here, and I can just pull all of them, dump them into Claude, and say, make me one for the thing that I need. And unless your code base is open source, I'm not going to be able to do that. So I think my hope for the kind of I don't know, market leaders these days is that more and more of them realize, like, oh shit, the excess value that my customers get from open sourcing all my code is actually way more than keeping it, and then I get to take advantage of the marketing and the engineering and all that stuff from open sourcing my code. I just have to think a little bit more about how I want to approach my business side, essentially.
Wait, why can't a closed source company do that themselves? Like create these integrations?
They could, yes. So what they'll have to do is divert their engineering team over into like hunting down all the integrations and then manually doing it themselves. But if I as an end user, and so what they'll have to do is they'll have to go top down, right? Like they'll have to say, oh, these are the popular ones, so we're going to assign this to this team, and it's going to, like, the number of labor hours is going to cost a few $1 million to make this one happen. And then the next one, we'll release that a couple months from now. Whereas, like, if I'm on Franz and I find a new messenger, I'm just going to go to their recipe thing. It's going to take me 20 minutes to dump it into Claude and generate it, and I'm just going to post it here. And then there's going to be another one. And then everybody who is using this can also do that.
So what is it, like a pipe or a bridge between applications, like the APIs?
Yeah, let's see.
Okay.
So I have an example in the little screen. So this is the Discord recipe. And so one of the things that it says is a package.json. So we have a little config here, discordapp.com/login. So it looks like maybe they just log into it, and then webview.js, get messages. I know I recognize guilds wrapper here, or I recognize guilds. And then we have an index.js. So guilds is kind of how Discord organizes its messages. So let's check out index. Window.navigator user agent. We have KHTML like gecko. So yeah, this is all very pretty straightforward. So it seems like what they do is they have they have a headless browser of some sort. They log into the Discord client in that web headless browser. They pull out all the guild messages and then they dump it into the Electron application, which is the thing on your desktop that runs JS. So I imagine that's probably not the case with everything. So I'm curious as to how they do it for other stuff. But it seems really straightforward for at least like Discord and Electron apps. And there's not, in terms of desktop applications, there's probably not too many different ways to really approach that, I feel like. Let's see. Read the documentation.
But like, is Franz like a kind of middleware or something between your application and another application, and it just uses plugins as like ports or something? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, so Franz is a it's a messaging app. What's the there used to be one and it was called like T something. Does anybody remember? It's like 90s kids. You remember which one that it was like I always want to call it Trello, but it wasn't Trello. It was like a thing and it would have all your messages in it. So like what Franz is, if you can see this on the screen, is it's a messaging thing. It's got little workspaces, and it's got all of these potential integrations, and it just pulls the messages in. And it looks like it actually has a Gmail message too. So this might actually be the thing I was looking for. So might just hook this up to an agent and call it a day. Um, but yeah, so this is basically like presumably I think like the primary function of this application is to give you an interface that sort of regularizes incoming messages to some degree, and then says like, hey, you can hook into these APIs if you want to send messages, and you need to, whatever you're pulling them out of, just get them into this format and then send them to these APIs and they'll show up in your Franz. Is kind of like how I'm thinking it works.
Right. Okay. So these plugins make perfect connections to these other data sources, and then you have to customize kind of like how it connects to your app, right? Like that's how it would be done. Like there is some shit you have to do.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it seems to me like the stuff that they plug in. Okay, so the Franz is in Electron, and so they have like the real baseline. Like I see like a backend API.md. Um, so presumably I'm sending something to a like a backend server, and there's only a couple messages, which is like, okay, is the URL valid? And then it can hook into Electron WebView events to trigger custom functions necessary for services like TweetDeck, where the custom URL forwarding is needed during login. And then what's the front end here? And then yeah, they just like CSS it up from there. So yeah, I think it's primarily, it seems like we're going to give you a couple of default options, like if your thing has a web client, it seems like you can just sort of like hook in by giving it a URL. Oh, is this a bunch? Yeah, we have a bunch here actually. So let's do index. I know Mattermost is fully open source, so this might be different, but it seems pretty similar. So I have we're going to get, let's see, so Franz is extending Franz here. We're going to get, and we're going to hit, it looks like we're hitting the Mattermost API, so then, and we're doing a get, so we're going to pull some object from that, and then we're just going to give the object back, and then I presume this is going to grab from our Franz here, and we're going to say direct messages and all messages, and then we're going to set some badges, and we're going to loop, and then package.json is the other one. Yeah, I'm curious kind of how they sort of normalize all this stuff. I kind of want to like read a little bit more of the docs. But it seems...
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, yeah. I was just going to say, like, for each user, they're going to want maybe a certain amount of certain type of data or a certain amount of data. So, like, I feel like there needs to be a flexible agent actually working on the code, like for each. You know what I mean? Um, like these little integrations would be different for each person based on their needs, right? Because you don't downloading shit you don't need. I feel. Um,
At least for me, I feel like because I ideally I feel like in the ideal application, I don't want an agent generating any code. It's gonna fuck it up. So the thing that I
right now for sure.
well the thing that I think I could that I would probably do is like so if Franz is my application, what I'm probably gonna do is I'm just gonna make as many I'm gonna like my thing that my dev team basically works on is we go out and we try all the messaging applications. We see what sort of format the messaging is in, and then we make sure that there is an API that can pull like this, and this. And then from there, what I want to do is make it so that I can have on my desktop application. It's an Electron application, and my users can modify it with their own CSS. So what I would imagine is one half of these integrations is here's here's the default backend, here's the default front end, but all of the display of this Electron app, as far as I can tell, is just CSS. So if I have something that's not there and I want to put it there, I imagine I could probably do that, or ask Claude to do that. Would be my thought. And then
So
the
like
agent part, I think would be, hey, here's a big pile of JSON objects. Like figure out which ones I actually want, and then like shove them into this API. That would be kind of the agent part there, at least in my opinion.
right.
And then we have a more AI focused one here called Inbox Zero. Let's take a look at this. Automate your email. So I would love it if this was not just email. Clean inbox, happy life. Host it yourself. You like that? Oh, I see a create automation. This might be kind of what you're looking for, Kelly, when it comes to CRMs for Poisonal. See who emails you the most.
By the
Oh,
way,
but they
like
charge for the AI. Rip. I'm sure I can rig my own in.
Yeah, man. I so need that.
like with CRMs, are like I'm sorry, I'm a little ignorant on the topic, but are relationships being tracked over time, like and the state of the relationship between you and your, I guess, client, or how is that different than anything else? I mean, it's like a Rolodex, but it also has what else? Like deals or
So there's a couple. Oh, go ahead, Jakes. Were you
Oh
gonna
no,
say something
I was
there?
just gonna say I think that's a Kelly question. So yeah, go for it. Yeah.
um. Okay, so this is where CRM, and just because acronyms and everything with different disciplines. So CRM is customer relationship management, but it's like customer, who's a customer? If we look at, I'm just going to give an example of, I hate saying content creators, but let's just say in the sake of like, being your own business, right? Being your own bank, or just being sovereign. Okay, so you as a person, you have your data, you have your interactions, right? So just right here, it's like I mean I have worked on projects with people that are in this room or in other spaces, but hey, let's say that Tracker, like we had a great conversation, like here's in this. I want to remember like our conversation. Maybe you have a project that I find interesting. Maybe there's a link. I mean, all of this is data, and to me it's like the relationships and the inner lap, the kind of seeing how things kind of go together. I mean, but you could also get email addresses. I mean, there's a lot that you can do with it for, different content. I hate that word. I really hate that word. But, you can send out email campaigns, you can take payments, all of this is just your way of keeping track of everything. So it's your personal database. And it comes, and so that, I don't know if that kind of makes it, yeah, I'm not doing a good job of explaining it, but
Yeah, I think
No, no, no. Yeah, that's good.
the way that I, or like my substitute for CRM, or like my thing that I like to keep track of is who is working on what and who is good at what, and who like has extra of what and who needs what. Um, and the way that I do that is I use Obsidian to take notes, and the way that I organize my Obsidian is I just use tags. So whenever I am creating a page, um, or like let's say I see that Kelly is working on a new project, and she's got a website for it. Well, I'm going to go to the website. I'm going to clip the website with my Obsidian web clipper, and the tag that I'm going to insert is like people/Kelly, and then like active websites, and then like has resources or something like that. And then anytime that I go back into my Obsidian, which is sort of my central kind of location, I can just search for the tag has resources, and then all the people who have stuff that like they're trying to do something with, or that they like have extra of and are trying to allocate, all the people will pop up. Or if I just want to get like the total list of people, I can search for people slash, and then I'll have a Kelly, and then I'll have a Chris, I'll have a Novak, I'll have whomsoever, and
yeah,
that's but kind of like my makeshift CRM
I
essentially.
wish. Yeah, no, I mean that's the thing is if I've talked about Obsidian so much to so many different people, it's crazy. And hold on, hold on one sec.
Yeah, you're good. Well, while she's one second, I guess I will to say hi to Novak. Glad you made it. And if you, I don't know if you're at your desk or whatever, but if you have any insights on how you manage your personal inbox, that's sort of the topic of the day, I suppose. So feel free to jump in if something comes to mind or seems interesting.
Oh, I'm actually really glad that this topic of conversation came up because yeah, my inbox is currently just managed by the default stuff that comes with Gmail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that seems to be the case for everybody. I grilled everybody on like, okay, what are we using? What's our favorite client? It's basically just like we forward everything to one inbox that we like. Like Chris's is Proton, Kelly's is Gmail, and maybe there's an Outlook involved. And then yeah, we just sort of hope for the best. And there are I guess the ideal question that I answered today is what would it take to get people to not do that? Because there's like I feel like the value prop has to be really quite high, or the problem has to be like really painful in order to like just move off the defaults, because the defaults are good, but the
Like, do we need email? Like, is there a reason? I guess it's because of momentum, right? And everybody's on it. But moving forward, if we were to have a blank slate in front of us, like, can we move beyond it? Like, why do we use email? Like, is it the protocol, or is it like something else that I just don't see?
personally I don't use email very much at all, but um, I think to me probably I think whatever solution you have, or like yeah, the inbox that I'm trying to clear is not my Gmail. It's more like my Discord and my X DMs, and um,
Oh,
my
okay.
the thing that's for me is like I like to check in on like GitHub trending and like a bunch of RSS feeds. And so like going through all of those is kind of those are the data sources that I care about. Um, but I think really the primary and possibly only benefit of email is that like kind of everybody is going to have an address. Everybody knows what it is. Everybody like has kind of knows how that what that word is and how to use it, kind of thing. Um,
Right, and it's kind of like also used as an identity for some platforms, like to
mhm.
sign up.
Yeah, it is the pre-wallet wallet address, at least in my in my
Ah,
Right.
opinion.
that's
If only Web3's UX didn't suck ass still, kind of, maybe we would have moved on by now. But we're working
Yeah,
on it. We're
that's
getting
a
there.
whole other yeah, that's a whole other space,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
feel.
definitely. The
Can I jump back in here really
Yeah, yeah,
quick?
go for it. Yeah, you're good.
Sorry, my son was like, yeah, okay. Okay, so Obsidian,
Hmm.
this is like the culmination of migration, like all this stuff. So I want a second brain. Okay. I was in this dilemma of what we're talking about right here, but also all my files. I had it in OneDrive, in Google Drive, right? All these freaking files all over the place, duplicates. Then on my phone, oh, it was a hot mess. And so then this is how I learned of Obsidian. I'm like, cool, I'm very excited. Not it has knowledge graphs in it. I was like, sign me up. Well, I've been talking about trying to get signed up for this thing for probably like a couple of months because it's too like I'm not techie enough for it. I'm just not. And so this is where if you want to see like what is it, if I could have a pretty, if I could have a non-utility, right now here's where if I could have a pretty UI UX, dumb it down for me. I so want that. Like I would take all of my data because I like the thing with Chris was saying with Copilot. Okay, cool. I mean, I was gonna go that route too, but then for me, that to me, I feel like it's this migrating all this data from one thing to the other. And I wish that Obsidian seems like it is the answer. I mean, it really does. But it's too much for me. And so then that's where I get frustrated. And then I sit in this dirty data, this just, it's just like, I don't like it at all. So I wish that it would be more streamlined. I really do. Yeah, I wish I could use Obsidian.
Well, the question is, how have you tried, and how long did you try it for, and where did you get stuck?
Okay, fair. Why do you have to ask good questions? Yikes. So I have not tried that hard because I've had people say, "Oh, I'm going to do this for you." I'm like, "Cool." And then it never goes anywhere. And so I've tried, no, you know what? I have tried to do vaults. Okay, yeah, I just haven't dug into it because people say they're going to do it for me and that they'll set it up and then it just kind of sits there. So that kind of means that I should just do it myself. But I don't know. So yeah,
So,
stop asking good questions. Damn it.
well, the thing with Obsidian is you want to do it yourself. You don't want other people to do it for you. If you pull like a template or something from Obsidian,
Yeah, that.
like you want to, those are available if you want them. But the reason or the primary reason that I like Obsidian is because it's straightforward enough to not bog me down, and it has enough going on in the community where usually if I want something, somebody's already built it, and I can just go install the community plugin, or and that I have it set up so it fits my workflow. So I have like a little Chrome extension. I just click one button, the page goes from the internet, dumps into my vault with like the tags that are already set up. But I had to set that up. If I give that to you, you're gonna have different tags. You're gonna organize your system differently, and you're gonna like use it in a different way than I do. Um, so, and the good news is, if you go look for like, go on YouTube, like how do I set up an Obsidian Vault, and then maybe like browse through the Reddit a little bit, and then like start off by downloading it, installing an application, and
Yeah, I
setting
have
aside
it.
some time to
I
write it.
have that. I do have that. I have it on my phone. I have it on my laptop. And but that's where like adding the plugins because that's where I get stuck. That is one thing I get stuck on. But yes, it's just I feel like this is where I feel like I get stuck in all of this. Like the amount of time that like I get anxiety just talking about it. Like I'm like,
Hmm.
Yeah.
yeah, ugh. Like I do. I just want it to be done. So I would, and that's the thing. It's like I will pay for convenience. And so this is where I think that really, like, truly, open source has a really good, just like freaking white label it. Like just do proprietary stuff and sell the. Because if people can figure this stuff out, I will pay for it. And I know that other people
Mm.
will too. So anyway,
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
mhm.
and
Yeah, you go.
yeah, I was just gonna say that Kelly, you basically represent the masses. Not, I hope you don't take that
No,
offensively,
I
but
know
I
I do. I
also,
keep that's what I
Absolutely.
do.
yeah,
And that's where it's like, I mean, honestly, I am probably one of the most technical, non-technical people that I know. And I'd say this to you guys all the time. I'm like, you can make the most awesome tech, but if people like me or downstream from me can't use it, like, gee, I mean, what is it?
yeah,
And so
Well,
I feel like I just, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and so the thing that I'll point out here is Kelly being very technical and very determined to use this application. I'll tell you, Kelly, the way that you add a plugin to Obsidian is you open Obsidian. In the bottom left, there's a little cog. You click the cog, and then you click Browse Community Plugins, and that's how you add plugins. Um, but it was not clear enough that it's only 3 steps away, and even that was anxiety inducing for our customers. So we, as a collective in open source, need to figure out how to make things like stupidly easy to the point where that isn't a
yeah.
blocker. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's just about saying what you want and then that thing happening,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that's the future. It has to be.
Yeah.
And I'm not the only one saying it. There's a lot of people talking this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think and I think that's what I'm hoping. Kind of the direction that we start heading in open source is we can leverage, because I think the reason people don't use open source stuff is because like a terminal is scary. Like it, but like at least I am not. I wouldn't call my like I don't have a particular aptitude for like wrapping my head around this stuff quickly, or like I do now, but that's because like I intentionally tried to build that. But I had no fucking clue what I was doing. For like, I was like I saw cool stuff on GitHub and I wanted it, so I was like, okay, well now I have to go like I'm gonna go read the documentation, I guess, and see if I can figure out how to download this fucking thing and start it. But a lot of times, for a lot of like quite useful open source projects, the because people aren't really sure how to monetize them, it's difficult to have an onboarding team to like go out and make the sales, get more users, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and so and of
Right.
course, because you have so many people working on it, a lot of the focus ends up being like, okay, can we make this consistent enough for a lot of people who are all at different times, different dates, doing different stuff? Like, can we just make it so that even the developers can get on the same page to be able to work on it? Much less the customers. So, like, kind of one of the advantages of the closed source centralized thing is, it costs you a few $1 million, maybe $1 billion a year to have a really solid software team, but you get to have one software team that is all sort of like dedicated and assigned to one thing, and they are going to be there working on your one thing 40 hours a week, which is difficult to beat, but I think is beatable in the modern age, I suppose.
I think it is. And I think that, but here's where so I've had this conversation with a few of you guys, and it's this decentralization versus centralization. It's not this one or the other, right? And so nothing is good in extremes, I don't believe. And so this is where, like, I've talked with some, devs. It's like, hey, if it closed source, like that, we have all the tech, right, that we need. I truly believe this. And so it's a matter of figuring out, like we're doing right here, like what you're doing. It's like, hey, talking with users, and oh, I see your hand up, Novak. And so one second, it's like, talking with users and getting this feedback and instant feedback with it. And I think that I won't say who it was, but we were talking, and I even do it. It's like, there's so many people that we just love technology, right? And we're like, I mean, we're here, right? Like having these conversations. And so we're not getting paid by like one certain thing. So where we go and like how much time we spend on each thing is dependent upon a lot of different factors. And so, this goes into it's just, there's a lot to where if you do take the time to organize, even in a decentralized way, organization still needs to be there. And I think that there is this equilibrium that we need to find and that is there. But anyway, I'll mic up, and then Novak, I saw your hand up.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, so it might be a kind of complex to implement, but one of the things I was thinking is that it would be really useful to display like the actions that you can take in an application as like a graph. So a user could just query something like the word draw, and a graph network would come up with the kind of like plugins or actions that you can take within the software, uh, and like kind of display the sequence of actions that would be able to take, rather than them having to navigate through menus and everything. It would just identify the relevant actions in response to like a query and put it into like a graph network.
Yeah, I think that's really solid.
Oh,
Actually, I think my general thesis
yeah.
for uh, uh, how to make good AI applications is these days is to not make AI applications, just make good applications and then put AI in them that helps you use them. Kind of thing. Sorry, Seven Record, you go ahead.
Yeah, no, it sounds almost like it shows you the possibilities. It sounds like you're saying like the user wants to do something, it interacts with the app, and the app gives back a series of choices or functionality they can execute. But then it's like, which one do you choose? So it's almost like I feel at that point the application would have to ask, what path do you want to take? Am I correct on that? How I'm holding that in my head?
Yeah, I mean, usually the user generally knows what's possible, like what actions are possible, like in like applications. But there's a navigation process through like menus and checking a bunch of things in order to find the action.
Well, and I think this is where open source can kind of fail sometimes, is because open source, by its very nature, has a lot of engineers working on it and very few UX designers working on it. So the
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
yeah, unfortunately we usually don't have enough capital to deploy to make something, to get the same kind of caliber of UX department, that, like, for instance, Apple or something does, where they can have people just sitting down and making sure and going out to like interview users and watch them use it and watch them break it and like the weird stuff they're doing and make sure that the feedback, because the question you guys are asking is, how do I know what my application is doing? And that's the entire UI of the application. That's like the title bar, that's the colors, that's the buttons, that's the shapes, that's the noises, everything. And so like having a graph kind of on the back end is, I think maybe you don't even have to implement it that complexly. I think maybe really all you need is you need a decent like UI that like shows you how the app works intuitively, and then like a little guy on the side that you can ask questions like, hey, like how do I add a plugin, or like, hey, like like I have this service, can I, like, do you guys have an integration for it,
Yes.
kind of thing.
Oh, real quick before I see Meta poops. This is where a knowledge base comes in. So not a knowledge graph, but the knowledge base with the end user, and letting a lot of end users don't even know what a knowledge base is, to be honest. And so this is where, and I could take this down into the knowledge base then as a way to, when we're looking at data, right? And the knowledge base is dependent upon a specific thing. So you could have like a subject matter expert or a discipline. And so there's a lot of ways that just the knowledge hub also can bring a lot of value to the end user, but then also even up to training data. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of data you could collect, just about how your users use your application. And I think a lot of times, another thing with open source is that, when I'm selling an application, I'm always going to ask for telemetry because I want to make the very best thing. In open source, it's almost like a point of pride that we don't collect any telemetry, which I think is good. But I think, and one of the things that I like, for instance, one of my pet projects is Open Interpreter, and one of the things that I love about them is after I'm done using it, they'll always ask me, "Did this work? Yes or no? And if yes, like, are you willing to send us information about what you did?" And the I feel like maybe it could get annoying, but so far it doesn't because it's not like a super core part of my workflow. But as long as you could turn something like that off and like maybe have a checkbox, I think telemetry is probably way under collected, because all you're getting is like you sort of collect it implicitly because you're an open source project and people are going to be breaking it, but the only feedback that you're going to get there is from engineers who know to go on GitHub and make an issue, or people who are going to be pissed off enough to go to your website and click on the thing, as opposed to making it like super super fucking easy to just sort of like, hey, like, did this work for you today? If no, like, like, then cool. Like, can you send us the buttons you clicked on, kind of thing.
And what if you got rewarded for that? What if there
Absolutely,
was
yeah.
compensation
Yeah.
for that?
Yeah, and then I think from there it's just a question of capitalization, which is perhaps what we will do. I would love to do another, or like at some point, I really want to do something where I either I try to advise or put my thesis to the test that you can make just as much money and or more making an open source project and giving it away for free than you can for making a closed source project and trying to sell it and defend your moat and all that stuff.
Right.
So perhaps
Yes.
we will make we will have sort of a side theme for next week is for any of these fun tools that we find, how are they capitalizing themselves, and perhaps be able to share that with the rest of the universe, I suppose. Metapoop, did you have a thing? I see your hand up. Did you want to have like a thing that you wanted to chime in on?
Certainly, and aloha yikes, and aloha Kelly. So good to hear you again
Aloha.
on a different app. So it's nice to be here. So yes, thank you for having me. I am just curious. I like all the open source talk and exploration and all the applications and happiness of it all. Um, just I'm just curious, guys. The apps as we know it, it might be already like dying out as we use it, because in the future, as AI is already so much advanced, I don't think that we're going to have apps. I mean, for now they're working, but I would say the prediction is that there's going to be just AI, and you just say, hey, can you write me a program to organize my books in a certain color or theme and stuff like it, and you take a picture of your bookshelf, right, and it just recognizes the different books, and it helps you to organize it by structure and creates an app for it, and then you just don't have to disregard it anymore, because AI will write the application you need for certain tasks without you have to search and download certain things. So my question is, as it's nice to talk about the apps which are used right now, but how sustainable and viable are they? And when do you think, guys, the era of apps as we know it are gonna be banished, like a lot of species and dinosaurs we know of currently?
Yeah. Yeah, it's good that you bring that up, and that's kind of what I was like kind of pointing to, yikes, when we were talking about the
Yeah, totally.
friends API things, like where like it would go in and just kind of like act like liquid and like kind of channel based on the user's needs, which is communicated just through the voice, right? You're not interacting with an app anymore. You're just talking to the interface to the digital reality, right? And yeah, I mean, this is like a thing that's being talked about a lot in the venture space, but it's it, it it's like it can, because I use Cursor and I can get it to do things. It's just not that fast yet, and it's not that accurate. But I feel it's like that seems to be a mainstream paradigm within definitely 5 years. But I would say
Yeah,
in 2 years,
I think
like
I would
it's
agree.
going to be.
There's has anybody checked out the Vercel AI SDK? I have a
What is that?
so
I've heard of it.
if you're not a web person, Vercel's like a really big like web hosting company, and they make Next.js. And one of the things that they did is they made a SDK called AI, for that's oriented around React server components. Which the fun thing that you can do there is they have a little section in their AI SDK about generative UIs. So you just define a bunch of components, and then you have your chatbot that's talking with your user, and then if the chatbot, or like if the user asks for something like, oh hey, I want to buy some stocks or something like that. Well, it'll like it has a little thing in the prompt that's going to go like, does the user need any of these tools right now? And if so, then it will trigger the server to like hydrate that component and display it in the chat window. So we're sort of like starting to move in that direction. Um, Although personally, I'm not sure that I'm super on board with it for a couple of reasons. One of the what I do really want that. I to me, I think there are, and like kind of the way that I'm building my toolbox is like I want to have the anything app that just sort of shows up when I need it, kind of thing. But to I think to make an AI, or like to have both an AI that's good enough at generating like high quality scalable software, and like able to assemble it on the fly for every user is like prohibitively expensive and like gonna take a lot of effort. Um, but what is um, but I think there's definitely something there where like the toolbox that we've had so far to build applications has been code, which can do generally deterministic things, and then like deterministically determined non-deterministic things. But now we have these sort of like reasoning engines that we can kind of like jam in the middle, where ideally we'd want something there to kind of make a judgment call. And I think that's really underused in terms of building applications these days, because usually it's either we have a chatbot and that's what we use the AI for, or we can make software and in like Cursor or V0 or whatever, and that's what we use the AI for, and we just make normal software. But there's a couple of things that are tend to be like thus far have been like mostly more like experiments or proofs of concept than anything, that are like we are going to have code, but occasionally like the execution or the state flow is going to get interrupted by something that's like observing some state and then making a judgment call about what the next step to move towards is, and then we get back into our normal regular code software.
I
um,
want to jump in real quick.
yeah, go for it.
So this is where I think looking at SaaS comes into play. Now, again, this goes with also you have to look at this from a pretty UI UX perspective. Okay. So with SaaS, the whole thing about SaaS is like sticky sales, right? You start with a core product, one or two, kind of the Linux thing, do one thing, do it well. But then, and you guys probably, some of you have heard me talk about this, but what happens is that you as a company, because I've done SaaS sales, it's like the way you sell SaaS is you upsell. And then you say, oh, okay, well, now here's this ancillary product and you need this. And oh, so you keep having these things that these different products that are just thrown into this stickiness, right? That you don't even need. And so it's really not a value add. It just you kind of just it doesn't do anybody any good. But this is where SaaS companies are going to just kind of collapse on each other, on themselves, because you have
Yeah.
whole different departments that are different products. So you have a whole product that are you have marketing teams that are supporting a product that you don't even need. And so this is where, again, all of these different products, if you just take the sticky part where it's all clumped together and you put out the building blocks, like, with decentralization, right? Again, we have all of these things. And then that's where I think that this is where it's an intelligent CRM, right? And I keep going back to CRM because it's just the way that the data is organized. It's just a database, is really all it is. But if you don't need all of these different components that a software company is selling you, the end user, then that's the real opportunity for open source. And the decentralization part is, and this is also an opportunity where, people don't know what they need. So consulting comes into play. So this is where the human component, where the consulting people like us here, are then recommending like what different building blocks people need. So I'll get off that. But SaaS is, we don't need it, but we have to
Yep.
transfer away from it.
Yeah, I think that's a very solid point. I'm very much into the idea. I think the way that we can kind of get the anything app is the peer-to-peer kind of personal server model where
Yes,
we
100%.
yeah, where we can kind of, rather than relying on building a giant scalable application, well, we can just get some configurations and send it over to your kind of personal a UI
Yes,
generator kind of thing. Um,
correct.
but what I will say is, I think it is probably about wrap up time, and the discourse has been fantastic today. So thank you guys all for coming and sharing your experiences. And I
Thank
guess I'll
you.
open the floor for if anybody has any final thoughts or parting things or any stuff they want to say. I guess.
Meta.
Yeah, I still see a hand up there, Meta. You're welcome to
And
share it if you have it, but you might have just left it up just because. Um,
you can never tell with this app.
You never can. All right. Well, that sounds like a wrap to me. Thank you all so much for coming. We will do it again next week, and I think, yeah, regardless of the kind of tooling that we do, I think what we'll try to do is explore kind of how they're monetizing a little bit to see if we can gain some wisdom in that area. And in the meantime, if you have any thoughts about the kinds of tools, or if you want to know if thing exists in open source, feel free to reach out however you want, and I can. Either let you know personally or do a whole frickin' space on it and go through all of them, and we'll make it happen. Cool. Well, thank you everybody, and yeah, I'll hit the end button and hope it works.